guys! In this video, I will show you what a coaching session with me looks like as we go over champion pool adjustments, breaking down matchups, laning phase, wave management, map awareness and team fights. I'm Akemi, a professional League of Legends coach aiming to get you to rank up. If you know this is not going to work for you, that's fine. I think it's best if you have about 3 to 4 champions that you stick to. So you still have something to choose from and you're not playing the same thing, every single game. But you also don't play everything, because generally people that kind of play so many champions, it kind of backfires, because if you don't really play a champion all that much, you're not very consistent with it. Like, your performance is not going to be consistent. So one game it might work out, and then another you might just, go 0-10 or something, right? So I think picking something that you like, something that is relatively strong, is going to help you a lot. So I think it's pretty important for you to kind of figure out what style you like, because some people like mages more, some people like assassins more.
I like both, to be honest.
So you have this great option that you can kind of pick from both. So you can look at maybe 2 assassins, 2 mages, or something along those lines. If you're pretty flexible, and if you pick up champions quick, you can also just kind of change a little bit as meta shifts. Because, for example, right now you could be playing Fizz and you'd be doing really good, but then Fizz gets nerfed tomorrow.
And he's even with an high ego, right?
Yeah, so it's not really worth to obviously change right now in this very moment. But I think it's good to kind of pick between champs that are pretty strong and champs that you might like, because at the end of the day you're playing the game to kind of like it and enjoy it. So there's so many champions that you really don't have to be stuck with something that you don't like. So a few of them, Twisted Fate, really strong right now that he just got buffed. He seems to be doing great work. Is also really strong for setting up ganks, especially if you have if you're playing with duo, you can do a lot of things with that. It allows you to roam pretty freely. You have good scaling, so that's something to consider. You mentioned Katarina, and Katarina can work really well, but there's two parts to it. One is, like you said, you can't ever blind Katarina, because if enemies use their brain a little bit, they're just gonna pick some hard CC. In this game, you just couldn't do anything if you picked Katarina, So it is a good pick. I just feel like it's very enemy team dependent. If you can play it or not. And I feel like Katarina is one of those champions as well, where usually people either one-trick them or they don't really play her. Just because, again, to keep the mechanics consistent and pretty good, and you have to really know your damage output on Katarina, because you have to go into the middle of a team fight essentially. So it's often something that kind of gets pushed to the side, and you either play it a lot, regardless of whether it's good or not, like people do, or you kind of don't. Echo, that you said, I think Echo is really good right now. I think he's in a pretty good spot. He takes advantage of the new items. Laning is good, scaling is good. You still have some setup for ganks and stuff. And in a way, it's also safe because of the ult. Really great for dives and roams. So Echo, I would definitely keep as you have it. Some other...
It could have been a good pick. Especially versus things like Fiddle. But I wanted to make a better fit for my team. So that's maybe already a mistake.
Yeah, I think we'll get to it in a second, but when you're picking, you have to kind of look at 2 things. So what role am I supposed to fit in my team comp? And is there anything in my champion pool that kind of fills it and that I'm comfortable playing into this, right?
So Echo would have been actually, so we needed magic damage, of course. If Twitch didn't type, he was going AP, but because I think that would actually be smart, because we already have a lot of AD.
So you definitely need an AP here. And I think if we look at the team comp overall, like, okay, they have Alistar, Yasuo, they have Garen, so it kind of feels like, roams are gonna be tough. Like you said, like you're not really looking forward to roam to bot side, and top is not gonna be easy to kill either unless things are already happening there.
Yeah.
So for the most part of this game, realistically, you're just gonna be planing against the Yone. So you either pick something that you feel like you can win the lane with, or you maybe pick like a scaling mage that is like safe, right? Because if you look at the enemy team, and with like all of these, that's all just engage, right?
Yeah.
So you need something that is a mage but is gonna stay alive. And I mean, Twisted Fate might be a little bit tough to play into this.
I was thinking about, because I played her last season a lot, Syndra, because her E is pretty good against 5 of their champions.
Yeah.
And
Syndra
she has like insane scaling. Victor could also be a thing. I really like Victor. I think he really, I just have a, how do you call it, a nice intuition for Victor and how to play. And I would not say I'm the best with his E, but I hit it pretty consistently. Even so, if the enemy is bad, it's usually a free win.
Back onto this game anyway. So you talked about the matchup. I think it was mostly correct. The one thing I would try to, I suppose, point out over here is the difference in sums, in the sense that like you're running TP, he's running Ignite. So generally when people run Ignite, is they're going to be looking for kills.
Yeah.
So this might tell you, okay, the guy might be trying to like play more aggressive, or I don't know, maybe he's playing pre-made with someone. If you have time, or if you're using one of the apps to like look up your enemies, you can check if he's duo with anyone. I don't think he was this game, but it's just something like if you have the spare time in the loading screen. I know sometimes these days they load in automatically and it's you don't really have time. So this just basically tells you that 1, he's gonna be aggressive, but 2, that you do have the advantage of a TP, which is gonna be handy both later in mid game if we get to mid game, as well as in lane. So if you kill him, you can operate the wave in such a way to like actually gain advantage of the TP as well. Because you generally use TP in like a few different ways. One of them is maybe you messed up and you need to get back into lane so you don't lose too much. Another one might be you just have to TP for tempo because there's stuff happening, or whatever. You TP to fights, or you go on a side lane and you just hold the TP until you need to, right? But you can definitely use it to gain advantage in lane. So that's just something to keep in mind. It's like, okay, if this guy dies, I need to look at the wave and think like, what is the best option for me to do with it? Because it's not always to shove.
Yeah.
Most of the time, if you kill a person, you just want to hard shove, crash the wave, get your reset in, and that's just kind of it. But there might be some cases when it's not. So it's just something to keep in mind. It's like, I do have this advantage. But also, I just need to look out a little bit for the Ignite just in case. The other good thing that I would recommend you do, and you're gonna be using this pretty much in all your mid lane games, and if you wake up one day and decide, hey, I actually want to play top, or I want to play ADC or something, you can still use this. So it's just so you break down your lane into levels, so we go by the more important ones. So 1, 2, 3, 6, and you're just trying to establish when you can and when you cannot trade with someone. So level 1, this is a ranged versus melee matchup. So level 1 is in your favor, right? You can auto, you can Q. This really works for you. Level 2, this is where we start looking at it, being like, okay, depending on what he takes. If he takes W with the shield, I think you're still perfectly fine. Level 3 is when I think your strength falls off a little bit, because your E is kind of a both offensive and defensive ability. So it doesn't actually give you much damage. It allows you to relocate and like get away from people. But I'd say like strength wise, it might be a little bit tougher, right? It doesn't mean that you get your ass kicked or anything like that, but it might be tough. And then we go on to 6, and obviously 6 just really comes down to ults. I think you can probably outplay him with yours. So this is just like a rough guideline that will take you a few seconds to do. And the next part of it is establish like what are the win conditions for this to work. And very often it's like, okay, so I just have to be in range like auto him, right? Or I need to land the Q, or whatever it is. Things like that as well. So like what you have to look out for. For example, Yone, his main strength early on isn't his E. If you wait out the E, that's it. You know, he just lost the trade. So that just gives you something as to like, oh, I just need to wait out this, or he needs to miss this, or you know, whatever it is. And this just kind of helps you to stay focused as to what you are actually supposed to be doing at each stage of the game and what you need to look out for. So it also switches off autopilot, which happens to all of us sometimes. You know, we're just clicking and we're clicking, click, and then you're like, oh, I shouldn't even have done that, but I wasn't actively thinking, right? So this kind of helps you to snap out of it a little bit and make sure you're thinking about what you should be looking out for and what you should be doing. Because, for example, I feel like the way you played level 1 was very, very passive. And you probably could have dished in a bit more damage. So it's just a good habit to get into. Like every single time you see your matchup, just briefly go through that. It's gonna take you a few seconds, and it kind of keeps you a little bit more focused on what what you're supposed to do. The other part of it is that you kind of mentioned yourself was you didn't pay attention as to which lanes are leashing. And I know sometimes it can be hard, right? Because, for example, here, the top lane and bot laners, they kind of show at the same time. So that would kind of be like, oh, where is this guy starting? And I mean, some junglers can start solo. But given how they're both laid, it means that someone is just faking it, right? And it can be a little bit tough. And to be honest, most of the time, you'll find junglers just start bot side because they like the leash more. If you are in doubt and you have no words or whatever. So the reason why this is important is, aside from your matchup, you have this option of like, especially in ranged versus melee matchups, it's very easy to push, right? And eventually you end up pushing and like you're standing in this little pocket, which you didn't like, and you said, oh, I need to, crash the wave because I don't want to be here, which is good. And it's good that you recognize you're not supposed to be here. In some cases, it can be good if you're here. So it can be good
when German comes to die.
That's an option. Or the other thing is, if both junglers are going for the same scuttle and you have prio, you can go and you can actually intercept what is happening here, and maybe even kill the enemy jungler with your jungler, right? The only thing is, it really depends on what you're playing and what you're playing against. Because, for example, like Yone Fiddle, if you're pushing and Fiddle shows up from the bush, it's a like level 3 Fiddle, and this is a level 3 Yone, and you have your E up, they should never kill you, right? Unless you don't press buttons. But obviously we're gonna assume you're gonna press button and they get nothing done, so it's cool. But like, let's say you are, I don't know, playing, just as an example, you're playing Orianna and you're standing here, and this is a Syndra. And they have like a Jarvan or Elise, right? If you're here, you should die every single time. Or at the very least, you burn flash. So for example, in that case, you're not really able to provide the prio for your jungler, and that's fine. You can't always do it. So I think here, you could do it because you're safe enough, and like the combo that they have is not deadly. But depending on, what we're looking at, it might be a case where like your jungler sacrifices you for the scuttle, and that is not necessarily worth it, right? So it's just something to keep in mind as well, that if the junglers are going towards the same way, you can ask yourself, okay, am I able to hold prio for him all the time? Or not really? Because you don't want to be overextended, like you don't want to die for this, because most of the time how it goes is a jungler appears a few seconds before a scuttle spawns, they kill you, and then they have guaranteed prio, and then like your jungler still can't do what they wanted to. So it's just something to keep in mind, because it will influence your decision on like what you want to do with the wave. Because if your jungler is going this side, and we're gonna say his jungler is going this side, there's no reason to hold prio. And you can just, sit here, and you can try and set up a gank for your jungler instead. So you can actually manipulate him and let him push you in to set something up. If that's the case. It's just, you kind of need to know with like whatever information you're giving, what you want to do with it. And obviously, you know, some junglers will not come to you, but if you create conditions, he's more likely to gank you, because if Yon is here, he's never ganking you.
Yeah.
Well, he might dive, but it's very, very rare that junglers will actually go and do that, because most of the time they're scared. So, you know, most of the time a person needs to be either here or in this little pocket. And this is where you're gonna get ganks.
Yeah.
So this is just kind of feeding information for what you might want to do. And like, especially if you do end up like, you know, playing duo with someone. And if you end up, you know, working together towards this can also help you quite a lot. So what you can probably do over here is try and punish him a little bit more. Because like, you don't really look to punish him all that much here, you know? Now, you obviously don't want to take 6 billion damage from the minions, so you need to auto, if you can, and then space back, right? So auto, click back, and you can try this again. You're playing Electrocute, so you can use this a bit more often. Obviously, if you still had your Q, that's also something that you could use. You popped it here, which is fine. It's just, in this matchup, I don't think he should be getting stuff for free. Like every single time he hits a minion, he should get a hit back. He shouldn't be, you know, free farming. Because you don't need to rush for level 2 either. You already have level 2.
Yeah.
Because you're already like, you know, minions ahead, 2 minions ahead of him. So no matter what happens, you already have that, right? And then when he has his Q charge, and you'll find that whenever you face Yone mains, this is like the biggest signs they're gonna go in or like try and poke you. Whenever this is up, they're either like level 1, obviously he can't QE, but they're gonna try and poke you a little bit. You know, so you trade back. And it's fine, you're trying to space away, you're trying to kind of pull them into your minions, and then you put in some few autos, so that's okay. And you hit level 2. Okay, so he takes W, so we're good. You don't need to worry about anything. Okay. So at this stage, you have 2 options here. Option number 1 is you're gonna push and you're gonna crash, which is what you're actually doing later on. Or option number 2 is see if he's gonna push back into you. Because you'll find that a lot of people, if you step back and let them, they just will push back into you, regardless of whether it's good or bad for them. So so if you ever are stuck, in a sense, like, I think here you're fine to shove this, right? But this might be an idea where, okay, maybe you're lower in HP than you are, and stepping up to shove this might be risky. You can try stepping back and seeing if he actually shoves it back into you. Now, once you get to like diamond and above, this is not gonna work, and they're gonna recognize this guy is screwed as long as this wave keeps pushing towards me, and they're not gonna do that. Unless they're on autopilot, and they will do it anyway, but most of the time they won't. But for now, I think you're probably safe to use this. And very often people will do that. And this actually goes for a lot of other situations where like you might be low and you step into fog of war so they don't see you, and they assume, oh, he's backing, so I'm gonna shove this. And then they shove the minions onto you, and then you can farm them under tower, you know, if you're really stuck. So you can definitely use that for your advantage as well. So this is fine. You shove this in. The wave crashes, so that's fine. Now this is a part where I would stop pushing, right? So we're looking at around 3 minutes in. This is a pretty common gank timer, because junglers will either... Now, Fiddlesticks, out of all of them, tends to full clear, so I wouldn't necessarily be expecting him right here, unless they're premates. And I mean, you are playing Lissandra, so it just feels like a waste of time, even if he does show up. So I wouldn't overly worry about it, but I also wouldn't really like to keep standing here, you know, and like take my chances. Now in this game, this is whatever, but there will be some cases where, like I said, this might be a completely different matchup, and you really don't want to be here, which is why I thought bringing this up is still important.
One thing I think also my mistake is like in a situation like this, I wouldn't even consider trying to let him push, because I assume he's good enough to not do it, and that's of course pretty tough because you can just freeze them. Yes, so that's just my worry, but yeah, I need to like get a feeling for them and look if they even go for maybe pushing.
Yeah, like generally you can kind of figure out what kind of player you're up by like level 3, level 4. And because if you spectate them a little bit, you're gonna notice some patterns in their behavior and be like, okay, if maybe he tried pushing it earlier, he might still try and push. Or, you know, okay, maybe not, maybe he's just kind of holding the wave, he's not hitting it. So that also can influence your decision, being like, okay, it doesn't seem to be working, right? So I need to do something about it. So yeah, ideally, I think you crash the wave, which is fine, you're safe to do it. I would stop pushing here though, because one, the fiddle might be on top side, your jungler is on bot side, right? So now this is obviously what we were guessing at the time with the information that we had, and like I said, someone was faking it, so you're not 100% guaranteed as to where he's gonna be, and that's fine as well. But I would drag him out because one, you're in a healthier spot than he is, right? And I know he has Doran's shield and he still has 1 potion, but you also have 1 potion. And you know, with the HP that he's at, like if Viego shows up, I think at least we get his flash, right? And depending on how you execute this, it might even just be a kill, because if like you lock him with W and Viego locks him with his stun, he probably doesn't even get to flash away, especially with like electrocute on you. That would be a pretty high burst, so you might be able to get a kill. But again, just kind of going back to what I said earlier, if you want to get a kill, you either need to put it in a space that works for you or a space that works for your jungler. And I don't think this space works for either. Because you can't 1v1 him where he is. You can't, you know, even try to. And obviously your jungler is not gonna show. So just let this at least bounce back into middle. And like this should be slowly pushing into you if you don't influence the wave. And then you can actually ping for assistance. So your jungler ideally shows up and, you know, helps you out a little bit on this one. Because here I think you keep shoving and like you wanted to get out of this pocket, but then you kind of lock yourself in it by shoving the next wave instead of, you know, just letting it reset. So you drop a word, so that's fine. Now I think the only downside here was that fiddle was already bought and you didn't spot that, so the word kind of goes a little bit 2 ways. Now I know it's hard to tell because there's like so many icons. Now you can see him here briefly, and then, you know, all of that is going on. If you want to have a quick look, you could just kite up a little bit, like quickly glance over here. You see fiddle, you can hold your word so you don't actually waste it, right? Because if fiddle is bot side for whatever reason, then this is just gonna be wasted for another while.
Do you think it's actually good warding the river brush, like the direct midlane brush, or do you think you better put it far more out?
I think it's fine this way if you don't want to waste time, because you need to get back into lane. I think ideally if you could, I'd probably place it here on the edge, so it kind of gets here but it also catches this area. But yeah, sometimes, like, you know, if there are minions here, you want to try and lose as little as possible. And this is not necessarily a case where like you hard shove the wave and you have nothing to do, so you can step up there. So if you have time, I think going a little bit further, like the deeper you can get the vision in, the more reaction time you're gonna get. But this is perfectly fine as well, because this also buys you extra time. It's better than having it here, so it's still fine as it is. And then I also think that it would probably help you a little bit more with your mana if you haven't shoved it that much, because a good part of your mana you've spent, you know, just shoving the wave. Now, because most of the time you queued him as well, I think it's fine because you're also getting like double value out of doing that, right? It's just that I think for a while you ended up pushing quite a lot and you didn't really have to.
Yeah.
And this is a similar case where you end up pushing, but then the question is like, oh, what are we really pushing for, right? Because here you can just step back and he's probably gonna shove this in for you.
Yeah.
And you can just kind of chill at that point, you don't actually have to do much.
Yeah, and I could have went way up if I saw the fiddle jungle and knew it. I could have stick to the top side of the plane.
Now this is still fine because you get out, but then you are going to be missing cannon here, and the wave is pushing towards him, which is problematic, right? Yeah. And then your jungler wants to make the play and you can't really do it. So that's like the other problem to it, is that there is a timer right now where you should be technically doing something, but you really can't. You TP back in, which is fine. Now he goes in for that. Viego's not moving, which is fine. But I would probably look to ping him back now. I think your jungler is being really greedy, and if Garen actually decided to look at his screen and he moves down a lot sooner, this goes terrible. I mean, this goes terrible anyway because he dies anyway over here to the fiddle. So he gets like super greedy. Garen's missing, so Garen might be coming down, and then this also makes you, lose your tempo in lane. Yeah. So if you can't make a play, whether it's because like a consequence of something that you did earlier, or just circumstances not allowing, sometimes it happens, that's fine. Just kind of make sure that you either like try and ping back people a little bit. So kind of what you said earlier, right, is you assume they're on the same page, but I guess the best piece of advice is don't ever do that, because you can have like 5, plat players in this game, and each of them is on like completely different level when it comes to like understanding the game and different aspects, because there's so many things to league, there's so many little things, and one person might have watched the guide and another one might have not, and another one might have watched a different guide that maybe wasn't good, but they took away something bad out of it and now they're trying to force it. There's just so much variation when it comes to like level of knowledge at the same rank, that it's just nothing alike. No. And even as a person coaching, I see it quite a lot, where sometimes 2 people are in the same rank or close enough, but their knowledge level is like entirely different. I think one of the things that you probably need to work on a little bit is your camera control. Because I feel like sometimes you end up focusing the camera on yourself a little bit too much.
Yeah, the problem is I played with a locked camera for most of my time until I figured out that most people play with unlocked cam. And so it was always kind of hard for me to fully transition. So I kind of have still the habit of pretty often locking my camera, just brain after pressing spacebar. Yeah, and this was unnecessary. It's obvious. Yeah. I don't know why I didn't press E. It's
Yeah. So this is kind of like going back to your plan as well. Like once you have this pre-planned, is like if he E's, I probably E as well. Yeah. We just wait it out, and then his damage is kind of gone, but you still have your Qs, and you still have your W if you're really stuck. So you don't take these sort of trades, because overall what you did here was correct, right? Like you can't really move anywhere right now. So you shove the wave to lock him in place so he doesn't move around. Yeah. And that's fine. And then you kind of, zone him away a little bit here. Yeah, and W was good. Stop him. And then you just E out. He also has to, reuse his E, but then he needs to walk back. Right? He needs to walk back, and this is where you can click forward.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And then you can try and harass him with like your Qs as well and stuff on the way and autos, and he can't really do all that much, because here you've lost so much HP that it feels very risky to stay in lane. Now you're Lysandra, you still have your E, you still have your ult, you still have your flash, so like you should not die here under any circumstance. but it is going to be tough because you can't really trade anymore. Right now you're kind of playing to survive, and just kind of hope that Fiddle doesn't show up.
Yeah.
Or that at least he's not 6 if he shows up anyway. And then it makes it harder because stepping up for CS is going to be tough, so like the only thing you can do right now is just get some XP while you're healing up. That's fine. Like here you didn't have to eat because you were like right on the tower.
Yeah.
And then Viego shows up and does this. But if Viego doesn't show up here, I think lane is very difficult.
Yeah.
And you don't have your TP up anymore, and you kind of can't really get out of it, and it makes you prone to like losing more gold and stuff like that. So sometimes it's one trade that can really mess things up.
Yeah. Yeah, just the one trade where I didn't press E. It was big. Yeah. And yeah.
This, I mean, I don't think you should have really done much, or like, I wouldn't try and save this guy right now, because I feel like this kind of endangers you. You've no flash, you've no ult, and you have E, but there is going to be still like a good bit of abilities here. Like if they manage to CC lock you, you might not be able to recast it.
Yeah.
We don't know what Fiddle
was. In this situation too. I realized it was not that smart when I saw Fiddle. But yeah, my first thought was just throwing a Q so they get slowed and he maybe gets out like with a little effort. But yeah, it turned into a pretty wild thing.
Yeah, I mean, you still get out and like, you guys do get a good bit out of it in terms of like their ults as well. So not the worst thing to happen overall, but yeah, I would probably just kind of stay in the bush a little bit, wait for him to step up, and if you then see Fiddle, then you just leave and they don't even know you were there to begin with.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, but he flashes a bit, right? Yeah, that's where I think I said I should have moved forward maybe.
I don't think you should be clicking backwards. Now, if you're really worried, because you obviously know right now these guys are all on Dragon and they can come here.
Yeah.
If they really want to, they can come here. Now, they're either gonna go on you or they're gonna go on this Twitch. You don't really know which one, or it might be just Fiddle coming here and bot lane goes there. Like, you have no idea how they're gonna respond. If you feel pretty confident, like, yeah, I can, probably get out by the time something happens, then you should be clicking forward. But I also understand, like, not clicking forward when this just happens, because you have very little time, and you have no ult, you have no flash, and your E is on cooldown. So I can also understand not going for it, because I feel like it might be risky. If there's Alistar going your way, and like Alistar could have left the dragon a long time ago.
Yeah, true.
He doesn't need to stay on it until it's done. So I think it's fine to not coin flip it, but yeah, in another circumstance, if like you didn't have this info, you could be clicking forward, and you probably get him with Q.
This death is unnecessary. I knew they were in the river and just stayed.
Yeah. I think after a certain point, and I think I mentioned it to you at some point later, is just change your trinket to blue.
Yeah.
I think it just helps a lot against champions like Fiddle, Kayn, Shaco, all of those, so you get a deep ward somewhere without having to step up, because a lot of the time, if you're in range to place your yellow trinket, you're in range for them to hop on you.
Yeah.
And yeah, against champions like that, or like Zac and stuff, you need to ward differently, because they're looking at, like, those are very standard places where they know people are warding, and they will look for non-standard places because they can do things in a non-standard way. And I think the blue trinket just helps a lot with that. Now, I think just in general, if you can avoid this situation as well, in a sense, you see Yasuo, but you move towards him, and Viego is resetting, you're kind of resetting, and Vision as well, with the next wave coming in. Now, this works out, and you get him, but it's also a good bit of commitment.
Yeah, for example, if Yon just E and R'd me, I would have been dead.
Yeah, I mean, Riven is here, and the Viego ends up cancelling as well. But again, it's just like one of those plays where, like, it works, but another game, this might cost you a lot. So even though this works out, like, okay, the Nautilus uses exhaust, and then, you know, like Diego cancels his reset. Sometimes it's whatever, but there are moments in game when it's pretty important that you do reset and get out on the map on time, and this might completely throw it over. So it works out fine. I mean, it doesn't in the end, but you know, but up to that point, it works out fine. It's still like dragging resources, and then the fact that, like, you know, the entire team fight here happens. Like I said, it works out in your favor overall because you are already ahead to begin with when this fight happens. But if the game is like a little bit more even, I mean, it's technically 13-14, but you know, like before all of this happens, like some games there will be times when you've just thrown the game. With, you know, something very simple. So even though it didn't have much of a consequence here, it's just something to be careful of.
Do you think getting more gold via kills and not getting it on the teammates would have made a difference this game?
I don't think so. I think you're playing a champion that's, you're gonna go in, you're gonna press on someone or on you, and that is most of your damage in fight, and then everybody else has to do something. Also, you can't always wait out to like take a kill for yourself. Sometimes you can.
Of course. I that's why it's a hypothetical question. Just like if you think you would have had more control if you got more kills.
Yeah, I think here you're kind of playing utility mage, so you're not like, you know, full on mage, but you're obviously not an assassin either. But you know, if you're, for example, I don't know, playing a Kali, right? Like the more kills you take, the better it is. Because the Fed Kali is an absolute nightmare. And it's gonna do more.
Yeah, that's why I prefer not playing champions like Lissandra or Twisted Fate, because in last, like in the end, your teammates need to do something to win the game, and with something like Echo or Akali, you can
more freedom.
have more freedom to carry.
I think this fight ends up backfiring. I mean, I suppose the issue here is Riven's not there for the fight. Twitch is not there for a fight, and it's just probably something that I would not be going in for, just because you're missing so much damage, right? Because sure, you can click the ult, but that's most of your like damage. You do one combo, and then that's kind of it. And then you have Nautilus, and then you have the Viego as well. But that's kind of it. Like Twitch is not there, Riven's not here. Now this is kind of their bad for not being here, right? But the big thing is your teammates are not always going to do what they're supposed to do, and you have to play around it. Because, you know, if let's say, I don't know, like a Sejuani throws an ult and she missed it on a target, and then you committed anyway, then sure, the obvious mistake is he didn't land the ult. But if you follow that knowing that the ult didn't land and you got yourself killed, then that's kind of on you. That you didn't respect the circumstance that you're in. So this is slightly similar in the sense that like we lack a little bit of damage here because this is damage and this is damage. You know? Now we can technically say that, oh, but you know, we also have like damage. It's just they have damage over time, whereas you have one rotation. Because, you know, the Yone and the Yasuo, they're gonna like stack their lethal tempos and conquerors and whatever they're running, and they're gonna get benefit out of it. And then obviously Fiddle comes in, so it's no longer 3v3. My thought was there that we maybe just kill him fast enough so Viego gets his reset, and usually Viego takes over fight if he's fed and gets a reset. But as you see in the end, it was like very, very close. Still a bad play because the teammates were not there, but like it was close to a reset, and that was maybe the game-turning play or game-deciding. I think so. It was definitely a point where the game got more difficult because they got a bunch of shutdowns of all of you as well, so they got more gold. The dragon itself is kind of, you know,
I don't
whatever.
like something great much.
But it obviously doesn't help. So I probably would have just like try and play back a little bit and like ping for assistance or even type it out, ask Riven to come. And if she doesn't, then we just have to acknowledge, okay, maybe she's not gonna be here. And like the problem is that your Twitch is like 0.6 at this moment or something like this, you know. So like their bot side is stronger.
Yeah.
So they gain benefit of having Riven there, because Riven had some kills on your team. So your stronger person is topside, and our weaker person. Now the Twitch doesn't join the fight, which doesn't help. But even if he did, he still is gonna, you know, do less than the enemy team. So
I mean, if it was the other way around and Riven was like in range with us, it would have been perfect.
Yeah.
But, that's
so I would probably be here right now. I'd be mid lane. I'd shove this wave, and like shortly before this wave arrives, I would ask Riven to come.
Yeah.
And I think the only time when you start this dragon is if another person comes here.
Yeah.
If Riven can draw 2 people to her, and you know, you guys will manage like a 4v3, then that's cool.
Yeah. I think another problem with going there and not pushing mid is also it makes Viego confident to go for a play, even though it's not the right time. And that's I can prevent that by just staying mid and asking Riven for help, as you said.
Yeah, obviously when you're mid you have to be careful, because you know these bushes were not warded at a time. You can even ping for assistance if you want, and sometimes someone will cover you. But yeah, definitely you could have shoved that, and then, you know, Twitch is still shoving bot lane, and then this fight doesn't start when it does.
Yeah.
And like Riven eventually end up heading down, so maybe if you guys didn't like go in straight up.
Yeah, also the thought was just to wait with my ult and just let it play out naturally and save my ult for a better timing, whereas it's more necessary.
And if you shove mid, someone might go answer, like maybe the Yona stays mid a little. Now it's obviously not gonna hold him forever, but it's gonna hold him a little bit extra, you know.
Sure.
And he might be late to a team fight and stuff. And if he's not, then we're already damaging the mid lane tower. So that's okay. Then there was this weird thing going on, with people kind of hanging out and these guys dying. Now, I don't think there's a huge amount as to what you can do here. But what I would probably look to do here is just try and like ping everyone back. Like, why is he running? You know? It's like this meme, like, why are you running? Because we're absolutely not gonna fight here. So I would try and ping him back. I would try to ping the Viego back and just try and leave, because this guy is clearly confused.
And he's way too overextended.
And then Viego has overextended. These guys are just waiting to turn on one of you, and your ult is still down. You have flash, but then it just feels bad to use your flash to get yourself out of situation where you shouldn't have been to begin with, you know? And like then this guy could have left as well, but the Twitch goes in, you know? And like if the Twitch goes in anyway, because obviously the fact that you ping does not guarantee he's gonna do what you want, but it gives you higher chances, right? That he will do.
And also again, this like me turning back with Viego just gives him more confidence to go back. Maybe if I already turned, he just would have said, okay, it's done, let's move on.
Yeah, because if you ping someone back but you walk with them, they're like, oh, we're still making my play. I have backup. But if you move away, not always, but a lot of the time people will get discouraged and be like, oh, he's not coming, so, you know, whatever.
I mean, he still has my back, but it's the bad, not a play to give him like back.
Thank you for watching. Check out my social media for news, discounts and events, and book your first coaching session with me to start ranking up today.